right, so John O'Brien, thank you for joining me today. Just a bit of context around how we know each other. We have an event called the National Clean Tech Conference and Exhibition, been running for, well, it would have been a couple of years this year. And you, as I think arguably the father of clean tech in Australia, have been instrumental in helping us guide that off the ground. So thanks again for your help there. The point of these conversations we're having is to explore the idea of the opportunity in adversity, the adversity that we're all going through individually, as businesses, as nations, as the world. Yep. And I guess, speaking of clean tech, I'd like to ask you about this consensus which seems to be growing around the idea that Australia's opportunity at the moment in this adversity from an economic point of view is to pivot, if you like, to the green economy and what lies there. Now, assuming you agree with that sentiment, why is that the case, and what would that look like?
So we've been doing quite a lot of work on this at the moment around green recovery and what the opportunity is, and kind of the basis for it is that there's going to be disruption through energy transition and decarbonisation. That's going to change pretty much everything about our economy. We're in the middle of a disruption from COVID and kind of how that is panning out, and we're having to do a whole lot of things and change things around. So rather than sort of reinventing our 20th century world through stimulus, how about we redirect some of that money to build a 21st century world? So that's kind of the philosophy behind it. And what can we do? There's a stacks of stuff, and we've kind of been looking at the vulnerability of sectors to COVID and the vulnerability of sectors to climate and where that interlinkages. And so areas where there's particular opportunities are sort of transport and energy, and even the built environment to some extent. And then we've been sort of building up what are the portfolio projects you can do immediately. So with the next 6 months in the kind of this respond sort of period, and then we'll get into a recover period maybe over the next 18 months where you can start building projects, and then maybe some longer term ones and start building the foundations. And there's a lot of work there, and clean tech is absolutely in the middle of all of that. The stuff that 15 years ago was sort of on the shelf, very expensive, it was only the deep green environmentalists who'd be buying it, is now the cheapest solution, and that's been the evolution of clean tech over the last 15 years, and it's great to be now deploying it.
And is this something which is specific to Australia, or you think this is just a sort of generic opportunity that's across most economies?
So I mean, to some extent, it's global, and through the Deloitte sort of Global Economics Network, we're actually chatting to many governments around the world, but it's also very specific to each geography and each region. So what are the elements you do? Where would you spend your money? Some simple things in Australia around kind of emission standards, vehicle emission standards, or things like that to help drive or EV charging infrastructure. In terms of buildings, there's a whole lot of public buildings you could sort of do LED retrofits. You could look at virtual power plants in terms of government owned buildings. All those old hot water heaters, there's still how many million out sitting out the back of all those properties, a program to actually, update those and save household bills. So there's a whole lot of stuff that's quite specific to Australia, but as a concept, it's pretty generic. And all countries are going to go through disruption in terms of decarbonising.
And I suppose the follow-up question to that is we seem to have this dichotomy in Australia, I think, where on the one hand, we have local governments, and again, you mentioned this early on when we started talking about clean tech. We have these local governments who are internationally renowned for being on the edge. I hate to say it, the coalface of fighting climate change and adopting solutions and getting runs on the board in terms of what they're achieving. We have state governments who is kind of seem to have a bet each way depending on where their politics lie, and of course we have a federal government which has just found out about hydrogen. And that seems to be as far as they want to go, and you just wonder if, I don't know, do you short of a coup, short of another leadership change, short of a change of government, do you think the groundswell, do you feel optimistic that the groundswell from from local governments, from state governments, and hopefully from business and industry can finally, convince our Lord and Masters in Canberra that herein lies this fantastic opportunity to
So I mean, and obviously that's not a short-term fix there, but where I see it with governments, and I see it the same with business, if you're not adapting, you're not going to survive. So the world is changing pretty fast on this, and the federal government is maybe not moving fast as many of us would like, to say the least, but it is moving from where it was. If you think about kind of the carnage of 2013, when of what happened with clean tech funds and the like, to where we are today. It's the same government, but it's moved a long way, and it came from a long way back, but it has moved a long way, and it's continuing to. And the technology roadmap sort of discussion paper, there's lots of criticism of that, but it's a whole paper on low emission technologies from this government, which is great. So things are moving, and with businesses, it's the businesses that are saying, well, we're not going to change. That's fine. That's their choice. They won't survive. Whatever they do, and that's climate is one thing, but it's any business that doesn't move forward doesn't survive. And it's the same with politicians. You either move forward or you don't. And I've got absolutely no doubt. Carbon is going to be priced. Within the next 5 years in one way or another. It is currently priced, through ERF, which is taxpayer money, through the LGCs and the RET, which is that's a shadow price on carbon. We already have a carbon price in Australia, and that will grow and will stimulate more activity. So I try not to get too worried about the politics, because the politicians have to follow what their voters want. So I think it's just better to get business moving and communities moving, and then the politicians will just come along afterwards.
Yeah. I suppose as long as they're talking, a bit like how the government seems to have opened the door to have a heart-to-heart with the unions. They may not agree, but at least if they're having a conversation, at least they keep talking. What was it? Churchill said, "Jaw, better than war, whatever it was." As long as people are talking, then hopefully a consensus can be reached. Awesome. Yep. Okay. Well, look, that all sounds positive. I'm connected with a lot of people in sustainable development through clean tech, and they're all quite fierce about how things are going. So it's nice to hear maybe more nuanced point of view.
Well, and also, I actually, I mean, it is. I'm a stubborn optimist without any fail. Without fail. But actually, I don't see the point of not being. So it's kind of like, well, you're going to achieve a lot more by actually finding the middle ground and bringing people along. It's worth shouting. Some people, you need some people shouting, but actually to find a solution, you need to bring people along on the journey. So.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, that's very good to hear all that, John. Thank you very much for joining us today.
No problem.
And sharing your thoughts on that. And we'll no doubt be in touch soon about Clean Tech 2021 now. Things in the meantime. But, mate, thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.
Great. Nice to talk.